The camera in Victoria Nash's hands felt heavier than usual as she navigated through the crowded backyard, searching for candid moments at what should have been just another Saturday booking. Children shrieked with laughter around an inflatable bounce house, while adults clustered near tables laden with food. And somewhere in this chaos was the birthday girl whose 7th celebration Victoria had been hired to document. What she hadn't expected was the man standing near the dessert table, phone pressed to his ear, looking simultaneously out of place and completely at ease in his tailored navy suit jacket, despite the casual party atmosphere. Brandon Thompson ended the call with his vice president of operations and slipped the phone into his pocket, reminding himself that he could spare 3 hours for his niece's birthday party. His sister Emma had practically begged him to come, and little Sophie had looked so hopeful when she'd asked if Uncle Brandon would really be there this time. He'd already missed her last 2 birthdays because of business trips to London and Singapore, and the guilt had been eating at him for months. Victoria adjusted her lens, zooming in on a group of children decorating cupcakes with excessive amounts of frosting and sprinkles. Through her viewfinder, she noticed the suited man again, this time crouching down to talk to a little blonde girl who had wrapped her arms around his neck. The genuine smile on his face transformed his serious features into something warmer, more approachable. She snapped several shots of the moment, instinctively knowing these would be among the favorites. "You must be the photographer," a friendly voice said from behind her. Victoria turned to find a woman in her early 30s with the same blonde hair as the birthday girl, holding a tray of juice boxes. "That's me. Victoria Nash. You must be Sophie's mom," Emma Caldwell. "Thank you so much for fitting us in on such short notice. Our original photographer canceled last week, and I was panicking." Emma set down the tray and wiped her hands on her jeans. "Sophie's been talking about this party for months. She wants everything perfect." "Well, from what I've seen so far, it's pretty spectacular," Victoria said honestly. The backyard had been transformed with colorful streamers, balloon arches, and what looked like a professional face painting station. "You've done an amazing job," Emma laughed. "I can't take all the credit. My brother helped with a lot of the planning, believe it or not. He might run a pharmaceutical empire, but apparently he's also secretly good at party logistics." Victoria's eyes drifted back to the man in the suit jacket, who was now being dragged toward the bounce house by Sophie and 2 other children. Something about the way he moved tugged at her memory, like a song she couldn't quite place. "That's your brother, Brandon. He's usually buried in work, so I'm thrilled he actually showed up today. Sophie adores him." Emma waved at someone across the yard. "Sorry, I need to go rescue the piñata situation. Please help yourself to food and drinks. And thank you again." As Emma hurried off, Victoria continued her work, moving through the party with practiced ease. She'd been doing photography for 6 years now, ever since she'd dropped out of her graphic design program and decided to pursue what actually made her happy. Her parents had been disappointed, but she'd never regretted the choice. There was something magical about freezing moments in time, capturing joy and love and genuine emotion through her lens. She photographed the cake cutting, the present opening, the games and the dancing. But throughout it all, she found herself drawn back to Brandon. Not because he was attractive, though he definitely was, with dark hair that seemed perpetually on the verge of falling into his eyes, and a strong jawline that suggested he was someone used to making difficult decisions. It was something else, something in the way he carried himself that felt achingly familiar. Brandon caught her looking, and their eyes met across the yard. For a moment, everything else seemed to fade into background noise. Her breath caught in her throat, and she saw his expression shift from polite acknowledgement to something more intense, more searching. Then Sophie crashed into his legs, demanding he judge a cartwheel competition, and the moment broke. Victoria shook herself mentally and went back to work, annoyed at her own reaction. She was here to do a job, not get distracted by some CEO who probably dated models and definitely lived in a completely different world than she did. The party continued for another 2 hours. Victoria captured hundreds of photos. Sticky fingers and chocolate-smeared faces, the pure joy of children at play, the warmth of family gathered together. As things began winding down and guests started leaving, she was packing up her equipment when Brandon approached. "You're very good at what you do," he said, his voice deep and smooth. "I've been watching you work. You have a real eye for the right moments. Thank you." Victoria secured her telephoto lens in its case, very aware of how close he was standing. "Sophie's a great subject, very expressive. She gets that from her mother." Brandon paused, studying her face with an intensity that made her pulse quicken. "I'm sorry, this is going to sound strange, but have we met before? You seem incredibly familiar." The words sent a jolt through her system because she'd been thinking the exact same thing all afternoon. "I don't think so. I'm pretty good with faces, and I'd remember meeting you." "What about 12 years ago? Did you ever spend time in Riverside?" There used to be a community center there that ran summer programs. Victoria's hand stilled on her camera bag. Riverside, the community center, summer programs. Memories cascaded through her mind like falling dominoes. Sticky summers filled with art classes and awkward teenage dancing. A lanky boy with dark hair who'd always sat in the back during the mandatory assembly meetings. Shy smiles exchanged across crowded rooms. "Ben," she breathed, using the nickname she suddenly remembered. "You went by Ben back then." His face broke into a genuine grin, years of corporate polish falling away to reveal something more boyish, more real. "Vicky. Oh my God, I can't believe it's actually you. Your hair is different." "It's not neon blue anymore," she said, laughing despite the shock coursing through her system. "And you're taller, a lot taller. Growth spurt at 16. Brandon ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she suddenly remembered him doing constantly as a teenager. "I looked for you, you know. After that last summer. But you'd moved, and this was before everyone was on social media. My dad got transferred to Portland." Victoria's mind was reeling. Ben Thompson, the quiet boy who'd partnered with her for the center's photography project, who'd shared his lunch with her when she forgot hers, who'd kissed her exactly once under the oak tree behind the building on the last day of the program. She'd been 15, he'd been 16, and it had been sweet and awkward and perfect in the way only first kisses could be. "I tried to find you too. I asked the center to forward a letter, but I never heard back. I never got it. My family moved to Connecticut 2 weeks after the program ended. My dad got a job opportunity he couldn't pass up." Brandon's eyes were searching her face like he was trying to reconcile the girl he'd known with the woman standing before him. "This is crazy. What are the odds?" "Pretty astronomical," Victoria admitted. Her heart was hammering in her chest, a mix of nostalgia and something more present, more immediate. The boy she'd had her first real crush on had grown into this man, successful and confident, and still somehow maintaining that underlying gentleness she remembered. "Uncle Brandon, come see what I made." Sophie's voice cut through the moment, high and insistent. Brandon glanced toward his niece, then back at Victoria, clearly torn. "I should. But can we talk more, please? I'd really like to catch up properly." Victoria found herself nodding before she'd fully processed the decision. "I need to finish packing up, but yeah, I'd like that too. Can I get your number?" He pulled out his phone. And there was something endearing about the eagerness in his expression, the way his professional demeanor had completely dissolved into genuine excitement. They exchanged information, fingers occasionally brushing as they confirmed the digits were correct. The casual contact sent electricity up Victoria's arm, which was ridiculous considering they were both adults, not teenagers with first crushes. "I'll call you," Brandon promised. "Tomorrow? Or is that too soon? I don't want to seem pushy." "Tomorrow's fine." Victoria smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her chest that had nothing to do with the late afternoon sun. "I'll actually answer, unlike apparently when we were teenagers." He laughed, and the sound was rich and full of genuine amusement. "I'm going to hold you to that." Sophie called again, more insistent this time, and Brandon gave Victoria one last meaningful look before heading toward his niece. Victoria finished packing her equipment in a daze, her mind spinning with the impossibility of what had just happened. Of all the parties in all the cities, she'd walked into his. Emma approached as Victoria was loading her car. "Thank you again for everything. I can't wait to see the photos." "I'll have them edited and ready in about a week," Victoria said automatically, her brain still half focused on the revelation of Brandon's identity. "Sophie was wonderful. I saw you talking to my brother." Emma's eyes sparkled with unmistakable matchmaking interest. He seemed pretty captivated. Victoria felt heat rise to her cheeks. "We actually knew each other a long time ago. It was a surprise for both of us." "Really? That's amazing, and convenient since he's apparently already asked for your number." Emma grinned at what must have been Victoria's startled expression. "He asked Sophie to help him make sure he typed it in correctly. Very smooth for a man who usually negotiates multi-million-dollar pharmaceutical contracts." "It's not like that," Victoria protested, though even she could hear how weak the words sounded. "We're just old friends reconnecting." "Sure. And I'm the Queen of England." Emma patted her arm. "For what it's worth, I think it's great. Brandon works too much and dates too little. He could use someone genuine in his life." Victoria drove home in a fog of disbelief and anticipation. Her apartment was small but cozy, filled with framed photographs she'd taken over the years and prints from artists she admired. She set her equipment down and immediately uploaded the day's photos to her computer, but found herself distracted, her thoughts constantly drifting back to Brandon. She pulled up social media and searched for him, something she probably should have done before agreeing to exchange numbers. Brandon Thompson appeared immediately, his profile marked with a blue verification checkmark. CEO of Thompson Pharmaceuticals, the bio read. The company name triggered recognition. Thompson Pharmaceuticals was huge, worth billions, known for breakthrough treatments in autoimmune diseases and cancer research. She scrolled through his public posts, which were mostly professional corporate things, announcements about new treatments and charitable initiatives. "I made out with a billionaire when I was 15, Victoria said aloud to her empty apartment. "And now he has my phone number. This is my life." Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "This is Brandon. Just wanted to make sure you didn't give me a fake number," which would have been devastating but also fair since I'm basically a stranger now. Victoria smiled despite herself and saved his contact information before responding. "Very real number. Very surreal situation. Tell me about it. I've been explaining to Sophie why Uncle Brandon keeps spacing out during Candy Land. She thinks I'm getting old. Are you getting old?" "I'm 28, so according to Sophie, ancient. How about you?" 27, also ancient in kid years. Perfect. We can be ancient together. Are you free for coffee tomorrow afternoon? I know you probably need time to process the weirdness of this, but I really would like to see you again. Talk properly. Victoria bit her lip, torn between caution and the flutter of excitement in her stomach. This was Brandon Thompson, CEO and billionaire, someone who probably had investors and board meetings and a level of wealth she couldn't even imagine. But he was also Ben, the boy who'd taught her how to adjust aperture settings on a camera, who'd made her laugh until she cried, who'd been her first kiss. Coffee sounds good. There's a place called Brewed Awakening on 4th Street. 2 o'clock work for you? I'll be there. Looking forward to it, Vicky. The use of her old nickname made her heart squeeze. It's Victoria now, but you can call me Vicky if you want. Only if you still call me Ben when it's just us. She fell asleep that night with her phone on the pillow beside her, a smile on her face, and dreams full of teenage summers and brown eyes that saw straight through her. Brandon arrived at Brewed Awakening 15 minutes early, which was ridiculous because he'd spent the entire morning telling himself to play it cool. He'd rescheduled 2 meetings and ignored 3 calls from his head of research and development, all because he couldn't stop thinking about Victoria Nash and the way fate had literally walked her back into his life. He ordered a black coffee and claimed a corner table, then immediately second-guessed the choice. Too isolated, not isolated enough. He was acting like a nervous teenager, which was absurd considering he regularly pitched business proposals to rooms full of skeptical investors without breaking a sweat. Victoria walked in exactly at 2, and Brandon's breath caught. She was wearing a simple green dress that brought out the color of her eyes, her dark hair falling in waves past her shoulders. She'd been beautiful at 15, but now she was absolutely stunning, confidence and maturity adding depth to features he remembered as softer, less defined. "Hey," she said, sliding into the seat across from him. "Sorry, did you wait long? Just got here." The lie was automatic but harmless. "Can I get you something?" They went to the counter together, standing close in line, and Brandon caught the scent of her perfume, something light and floral that made him want to lean closer. Victoria ordered an iced vanilla latte, and when Brandon tried to pay, she insisted on splitting it. "You're not buying my coffee on what's essentially a catching up with an old friend meeting," she said firmly. "What if I want it to be more than that?" The words escaped before he could filter them, bold and direct in a way that made Victoria's eyes widen. "Then you should probably ease into that instead of leading with it," she said, but she was smiling, a faint blush coloring her cheeks. They returned to the table with their drinks, and for a moment, both seemed unsure where to start. 12 years was a lot of time to bridge, especially when they'd only known each other for 1 summer. "So," Brandon began, wrapping his hands around his coffee cup. "CEO, that's a long way from the kid who wanted to be a marine biologist." Victoria laughed, the sound lighting up her whole face. "You remember that? I'd completely forgotten you were obsessed with sharks. Great white sharks specifically. I had this whole plan to study them, maybe work for National Geographic." He shook his head, self-deprecating. Life took a different turn. "How does someone go from sharks to pharmaceuticals?" Brandon's expression sobered slightly. "My mom got sick when I was 19. Autoimmune disease that the doctors kept misdiagnosing. By the time they figured it out, the damage was extensive. She survived, but it changed everything. I switched my major from marine biology to biochemistry, then got my MBA. Started Thompson Pharmaceuticals 5 years ago with money from investors who believed in what I wanted to do, which was make treatments accessible. Too many pharmaceutical companies charge insane amounts for life-saving drugs. I wanted to do it differently, actually help people instead of just maximizing profit." He paused, studying her reaction. "Sorry, I'm probably coming across as either self-righteous or like I'm bragging." "Neither," Victoria said softly. You're coming across as someone who found purpose in tragedy. That's admirable. Is your mom okay now? She's managing. The medication helps, though she has flare-ups, but she's alive and relatively healthy, which is what matters. Brandon took a sip of his coffee. What about you? You clearly followed through on the photography dream. I did. Took a detour through graphic design first, but eventually figured out where I belonged. Victoria's fingers traced patterns on her iced cup. It doesn't pay as well as being a CEO, but I love it. Every job is different, every moment unique. I get to document people's joy, their milestones, their love stories. It's pretty special. You were always good at seeing things others missed, Brandon said, remembering the way teenage Vicky had captured the most unexpected moments during their summer project, finding beauty in cracked sidewalks and rusted fences and the way light filtered through leaves. I still have some of the photos from that summer. My mom kept them when we moved. Really? Victoria looked touched. I have mine too, in a box somewhere in my closet. That project was what made me fall in love with photography. Before that, it was just a hobby. Then I'm indirectly responsible for your career. You're welcome. He grinned, and she threw a sugar packet at him. Confident much, runs in the CEO job description. They fell into easier conversation after that, swapping stories about the years they'd missed. Brandon told her about building his company from the ground up, the countless hours and near failures, the eventual breakthrough that had made Thompson Pharmaceuticals a household name in medical circles. Victoria shared her journey through art school, the struggle to establish herself as a photographer, the satisfaction of finally making a living doing what she loved. You ever miss it? Victoria asked eventually. The simplicity of being kids. When the biggest worry was whether the vending machine would have your favorite chips. Sometimes, Brandon admitted, but I also wouldn't trade where I am now. The work I do matters. We're developing treatments that save lives, improve quality of life for people who were suffering. That's worth the stress and long hours. Spoken like someone who works too much. Your psychic abilities are showing. He leaned back in his chair, studying her with open curiosity. Emma said something similar. Apparently I have no work-life balance. Do you? Not really, no. But in my defense, there's nothing much in my life to balance the work with. I date occasionally, but it's hard to connect with people when they are either intimidated by the money or only interested because of the money. Victoria's expression grew thoughtful. That sounds lonely. It can be, Brandon said honestly. There was something about Victoria that made him want to be genuine, to drop the polished exterior he maintained for board meetings and investor calls. But yesterday, at Sophie's party, when I saw you through the crowd, I don't know, something clicked. Before I even realized who you were, I felt drawn to you. And then finding out you're Vicky, the girl I spent an entire summer working up the courage to kiss. It felt like the universe giving me a second chance at something. Victoria's breath hitched. Brandon. Too much. I know it's fast. We just reconnected yesterday. But I learned a long time ago that life is short and opportunities don't always wait around. I'd regret it if I didn't at least tell you I'm interested. Very interested. In getting to know you again, seeing where this could go. I'm not part of your world, Victoria said quietly. I drive a 10-year-old Honda and live in a one-bedroom apartment. I shop at thrift stores, and my idea of a fancy night out is the Italian place that has a 2-for-1 pasta special. Your life is private jets and galas and decisions that affect thousands of people. My life is also incredibly empty of genuine human connection, Brandon countered. Money doesn't mean as much as people think it does. It's comfortable, sure, and it lets me do good work. But it doesn't make me happy. You know what made me happy? Yesterday, watching you work, seeing the passion in your eyes when you were capturing moments. Talking to you now, remembering what it felt like to just be Ben with someone who didn't care about Thompson Pharmaceuticals, or net worth or any of that. I don't want you to fit into my world, Victoria. I want to find a world where we both fit. She looked at him for a long moment, her green eyes searching his face for something. Whatever she found must have satisfied her because she nodded slowly. Okay, let's try. But slowly, Brandon. We're not those kids anymore. We need to actually get to know each other as adults. Relief and excitement flooded through him. Slowly. I can do slowly. Can I take you to dinner tomorrow night? Somewhere nice but not stuffy. No photographers or publicity, just us. That sounds perfect. They stayed at the coffee shop for 3 more hours, talking until the barista started giving them pointed looks about closing time. Brandon walked Victoria to her car, and when they reached it, he caught her hand, threading their fingers together. I'm really glad Emma's photographer canceled, he said. Victoria laughed, squeezing his hand. Me too. Even if this whole thing is completely insane. The best things usually are. He lifted her hand and pressed a kiss to her knuckles, a gesture that was both old-fashioned and intimate. I'll text you details about tomorrow. I'll be waiting. Brandon watched her drive away, already counting down the hours until he'd see her again. Their dinner the next evening was at a small French restaurant tucked away on a quiet street, the kind of place that valued food over flash. Brandon had reserved a private corner table, and Victoria appreciated the thought he'd put into making the setting comfortable rather than overwhelming. I have a confession, Brandon said after they'd ordered. I looked you up online last night. So did I, Victoria admitted. Read about Thompson Pharmaceuticals' latest breakthrough in lupus treatment. Very impressive. Found out you won 3 photography awards last year and have a waiting list of clients that's apparently months long. Also impressive. They grinned at each other like conspirators. This feels like we're doing things backward, Victoria said. Usually you date someone and then Google them, not the other way around. We've never been conventional. We met as teenagers, kissed once, lost touch for 12 years, and now here we are. Brandon's expression grew more serious. For the record, that kiss behind the oak tree was my first. I know it's silly, but I've never forgotten it. Victoria's heart melted a little. It was my first too. I practiced on my pillow for a week before the program ended, terrified I'd mess it up. You didn't. It was perfect. Terrifying and perfect. He reached across the table, palm up, and she placed her hand in his. I want to kiss you again, but I'm trying to respect the taking it slow thing. I appreciate that, though for the record I want you to kiss me too, just maybe not in the middle of a restaurant. Noted for future reference. Dinner was excellent, the conversation even better. They discovered new things about each other: Victoria's love of terrible reality TV, Brandon's secret talent for baking, her tendency to rescue stray cats, his complete inability to keep houseplants alive. But underneath the new information, there was a foundation of old comfort, the ease of 2 people who genuinely liked each other once upon a time. After dinner, Brandon drove her home in his sleek black Tesla, though Victoria noticed he kept the conversation light and never mentioned the car's price tag. This is me, Victoria said as they pulled up to her apartment building. It was clean but modest, nowhere near the kind of luxury Brandon probably lived in. Can I walk you up, trying to see my apartment, judge my decorating choices? Trying to spend 5 more minutes with you before I have to go home to my empty penthouse and pretend I'm interested in the reports waiting on my desk. Victoria rolled her eyes but was smiling. Fine, but it's small and I haven't cleaned in a few days. Her apartment was on the 3rd floor, up a narrow staircase that clearly hadn't been updated in decades. Brandon followed her up, their footsteps echoing in the quiet building. Victoria unlocked her door and flicked on the lights, suddenly seeing her space through his eyes, the mismatched furniture she'd collected over years, the walls covered in photographs and art prints, the cozy chaos of someone who actually lived in their space rather than just existing in it. "It's perfect," Brandon said, and he sounded like he meant it. He walked to her gallery wall, studying the photos with genuine interest. "These are incredible. Are they all yours?" "Most of them. A few are from photographer friends." Victoria joined him, nervous energy making her fidget. "That one's from a wedding in Portland last year. That's the coast at sunrise. And that one is actually from that summer at the community center. I took it the day before the program ended." Brandon leaned closer to examine the photo of the center's courtyard, golden hour light painting everything warm and nostalgic. "I remember this day. We were testing different times of day for lighting. You said golden hour was overrated and I nearly threw my camera at you. I was trying to be contrarian and interesting, teenage boy logic." He turned to face her, and suddenly they were very close, the small apartment shrinking further. "Victoria," her name on his lips sent shivers down her spine. "Brandon, I really want to kiss you now." "Then you should probably stop announcing it and actually do it." He cupped her face in his hands, thumbs brushing her cheekbones, and gave her every opportunity to pull away. When she didn't, when she instead leaned into his touch, he closed the distance between them. This kiss was nothing like the sweet, awkward press of lips they'd shared at 15. This was heat and want and 12 years of wondering, Brandon's mouth moving against hers with an intensity that made her knees weak. Victoria's hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer, and he made a low sound in his throat that sent electricity racing through her veins. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Brandon rested his forehead against hers. "That was worth the wait," he said, voice rough. "Definitely worth it," Victoria agreed. Her heart was racing, her entire body humming with awareness. "Though if you'd done that in the restaurant, I wouldn't have complained." Brandon laughed, pressing a softer kiss to her forehead. "I should go. Because if I stay, I'm going to want to keep kissing you, and we agreed to take this slow." "We did agree to that," Victoria said reluctantly. "Doesn't mean I have to like it right now. Trust me, the feeling is mutual." He stepped back, physically putting space between them. "Can I see you again tomorrow? You're going to see me every day at this rate." "That's the plan." He grinned, boyish and unrepentant. "I have a meeting until 6, but after that I'm free. Dinner again. Or we could do something else. Movie, walk in the park, I'm open to suggestions." "There's an outdoor concert in Riverside Park tomorrow night. Local jazz band. Very casual." "That sounds perfect. I'll pick you up at 7. After Brandon left, Victoria floated through her nighttime routine in a daze. She texted her best friend Maya, who responded with a string of excited emojis and demands for details. Victoria typed out the whole story, still barely believing it herself. "So let me get this straight," Maya responded. "Your first kiss randomly reappeared after 12 years. He's a billionaire CEO and he's pursuing you like something out of a romance novel. Is this real life? I keep asking myself the same thing. It doesn't feel real." "Girl, enjoy it. When does stuff like this ever happen to normal people like us? That's what worries me. What if the novelty wears off? What if he realizes I'm just a regular person with student loans and a closet full of Target clothes? Or what if he's just a good guy who genuinely likes you? Stop waiting for the other shoe to drop and just see where this goes." Victoria knew Maya was right, but the anxiety lingered. She'd dated enough to know that fairy tale beginnings didn't guarantee happy endings. But when Brandon texted her goodnight with a string of messages detailing every reason he was glad they'd reconnected, she let herself hope. The next 3 weeks unfolded like something from a dream. Brandon made good on his promise to see her regularly, and despite his demanding schedule, he always made time. They fell into a pattern of dinners and coffee dates, long walks through the city, visits to art galleries and photography exhibits. Brandon was attentive without being overwhelming, interested in her work and opinions, making her laugh with dry humor that reminded her so much of teenage Ben. He met Maya over brunch, charming her best friend within minutes while also making it clear his interest was solely in Victoria. He asked intelligent questions about photography, genuinely wanting to understand her craft. He texted her throughout his workday, little messages that showed he was thinking about her even during board meetings and investor calls. Victoria found herself falling faster than she'd anticipated. Brandon was everything she'd imagined he might become, that summer when she'd been a teenage girl with a crush, but he was also so much more. He was kind to service workers, generous with his time and resources for causes he believed in, driven by a passion to actually make a difference rather than just accumulate wealth. He was funny and surprisingly goofy when he let his guard down, doing terrible celebrity impressions that made her laugh until she cried. But he also worked constantly. Victoria would wake up to texts he'd sent at 3 in the morning, working through reports or dealing with international time zones. He took calls during their dates sometimes, apologetic but clearly unable to fully disconnect. She saw the stress in the tension of his shoulders, the shadows under his eyes when a deal fell through or a clinical trial faced setbacks. "You're going to burn out," she told him one evening when he'd fallen asleep on her couch, 20 minutes into a movie, exhausted from a 70-hour work week. Brandon stirred, blinking awake. "Sorry, I'm terrible company tonight. You're always good company, but you're also running yourself into the ground." Victoria brushed his hair back from his forehead, a tender gesture that felt natural now. "When's the last time you took a real day off?" Define real. A day where you don't check email, don't take calls, don't think about Thompson Pharmaceuticals at all. Brandon was quiet for a long moment. "I honestly can't remember. That's a problem, I know." He sat up, rubbing his face. "But there's always something that needs attention. A decision that can't wait, a crisis that needs managing. I have 3,000 employees depending on me to make the right calls. Patients whose lives might be improved by what we're developing. I can't just check out." "I'm not asking you to check out completely, just to recognize that you're human and need rest too." Victoria took his hand. "You're no good to anyone if you collapse from exhaustion. You sound like Emma. Your sister is a smart woman." Victoria studied his face, seeing the conflict there. "I'm not trying to nag, I just care about you, and I'm watching you push yourself to unhealthy limits." Brandon pulled her into his arms, holding her close. "I'll try to do better. Maybe I can delegate more, trust my team to handle things." That would be a start. They'd been dating for a month when Brandon invited her to a company charity gala. "I know it's not your scene," he said carefully, "but it would mean a lot to have you there. Fair warning, it's formal and there will be press, and people will definitely notice I brought someone." Victoria hesitated. They'd kept things relatively private so far, operating in their own bubble. A public appearance at a high-profile event would change that dynamic. "Will I have to answer questions, talk to reporters?" "Not if you don't want to. I can run interference, but I won't lie, people will be curious." "I don't usually bring dates to these things." "Why not?" "Because I've never wanted to before. The women I've dated in the past were either industry people who used events for networking, or they were uncomfortable with the attention. You're the first person I've wanted to actually have by my side." He cupped her face, his expression earnest. "But if you're not ready, I understand. No pressure." Victoria thought about it. This was part of Brandon's world, part of who he was. If they were going to make this relationship work, she needed to be willing to step into that world sometimes, just as he'd been stepping into hers. "Okay, I'll go. But you have to help me find a dress because I definitely don't own anything appropriate for a pharmaceutical industry gala." Brandon's face lit up. "I know a place. And before you argue about money, consider it a birthday present. My birthday isn't until November. Early birthday present then." The dress shopping turned into an unexpectedly fun afternoon. Brandon took her to a boutique where the staff clearly knew him, and Victoria tried on a dozen gowns while he offered opinions with surprising fashion sense. "This one," she said, stepping out of the dressing room in a deep emerald gown that hugged her curves and made her eyes brilliant. "What do you think?" Brandon's expression answered before his words did. "You look absolutely stunning, like someone I definitely don't deserve." "Stop." Victoria turned to check the back in the mirror. "But seriously, is this appropriate? Not too much. It's perfect. You're perfect." He came up behind her, meeting her eyes in the mirror. "Thank you for doing this. I know it's outside your comfort zone. Love is about compromise, right?" The words slipped out before Victoria realized what she'd said. Her eyes widened. "I mean, not that we're in love. Obviously. That would be crazy after only a month. I just meant in general, relationships require compromise and Brandon turned her to face him, his hands on her waist. "Victoria, breathe." She sucked in air, mortified. "Sorry, I didn't mean to freak out and word vomit all over you." "For the record," Brandon said quietly, "I'm falling in love with you. Have been since that first day at Sophie's party, if I'm honest. So if you're worried you're moving too fast or feeling too much, don't be. I'm right there with you." Victoria's heart stuttered. "You're falling in love with me?" "Completely. Terrifyingly. In a way I've never experienced before." He pressed a kiss to her forehead. "You don't have to say it back. I just needed you to know where I stand." But Victoria was already shaking her head. "I'm falling in love with you too. I've been trying not to because it seemed impossible, too fast, too fairy tale. But I can't help it. You're everything I never knew I needed." He kissed her then, deep and sweet and full of promise, and the boutique staff discreetly looked away. The night of the gala, Brandon picked Victoria up in a limousine, which made her laugh even as nerves fluttered in her stomach. He looked devastating in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, and the way his eyes heated when he saw her in the emerald gown bolstered her confidence. "Ready?" he asked, offering his arm. "As I'll ever be." The gala was held at a luxury hotel ballroom, all crystal chandeliers and elegant decor. Victoria recognized several faces from magazines and news programs, other CEOs, politicians, philanthropists, people who moved in circles so far above her own they might as well be from different planets. But Brandon never left her side. He introduced her with unmistakable pride, deflected invasive questions with diplomatic skill, and made sure she always had champagne and was never overwhelmed by the crowd. Victoria watched him work the room, seeing the respect he commanded, the way people listened when he spoke about new treatments and accessibility initiatives. "You're really in your element here," she murmured during a brief moment alone. "I'm in my element when I'm with you," Brandon corrected. "This is just performance. Necessary but exhausting." They danced when the band started playing, Brandon's arms strong and sure around her, and Victoria let herself enjoy the fairy tale moment even while staying grounded in reality. "Brandon Thompson, is that actually you having fun?" An elegant woman in her 50s approached with a knowing smile. "Dr. Martinez." Brandon's greeting was warm, respectful. "Victoria, this is Dr. Elena Martinez, our head of research and development. Elena, this is my girlfriend, Victoria Nash." Girlfriend. The word sent a thrill through her. "It's lovely to meet the woman who's managed to get Brandon to smile at one of these events," Dr. Martinez said. "He usually looks like he's attending a funeral." "That's not true," Brandon protested. "It's completely true. You hate these galas." Dr. Martinez turned to Victoria. "What do you do, if you don't mind me asking?" "I'm a photographer. Mostly events, weddings, parties, corporate functions sometimes." "She's being modest," Brandon interjected. "She's award-winning and has a 6-month waiting list." "Photography," Dr. Martinez said thoughtfully. "That's wonderfully creative. Do you enjoy it?" "I love it. Every single day, even the challenging ones." "That's how you know you found the right path." Dr. Martinez smiled at Brandon. "Hold on to this one. Anyone who can make you remember there's life outside the office is a keeper." As she walked away, Victoria leaned into Brandon. "I like her. She's brilliant, scary brilliant, and she's been trying to get me to work fewer hours since we started the company." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "Apparently now there are 2 of you ganging up on me. You're outnumbered. Might as well surrender." The rest of the evening passed in a blur of conversations and dances, champagne and laughter. By the time they left, Victoria's feet hurt from her heels, but her heart felt full. "Thank you," Brandon said in the limousine on the way back to her apartment. "Tonight was bearable because you were there." "Just bearable," Victoria teased. "Okay, actually enjoyable, which never happens at these things." He pulled her close and she rested her head on his shoulder. "Come home with me tonight. I want to wake up with you tomorrow." Victoria's pulse quickened. They'd been taking things relatively slow physically, though the tension had been building for weeks. "Are you sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything." Brandon's hand traced patterns on her arm. "But only if you want to, no pressure." "I want to," Victoria said softly. "I've wanted to for a while now." Brandon's penthouse was everything Victoria expected: modern and expensive, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a spectacular view of the city. But it was also surprisingly impersonal, lacking the warmth and character of her small apartment. "It's not very homey," Brandon admitted, following her gaze around the pristine space. "I'm never here long enough to really make it feel lived in." "We could change that," Victoria suggested. "Add some personality. Art, photos, things that actually reflect who you are. I'd like that." He moved behind her, hands settling on her hips. "But right now, I'm more interested in other things." Victoria turned in his arms, reaching up to loop her hands behind his neck. "Then stop talking and kiss me." He did, thoroughly and deeply, walking her backward toward his bedroom without breaking the kiss. They made love slowly, tenderly, learning each other's bodies with the same care they'd been learning each other's hearts. Brandon was attentive and generous, making sure Victoria's pleasure matched his own, and afterward they lay tangled together in his expensive sheets, both feeling like they'd found something precious. "I love you," Brandon murmured against her hair. "Completely, stupidly in love with you." "I love you too," Victoria whispered back and felt him smile against her skin. The next morning, Victoria woke to find Brandon already up, standing by the window in sleep pants and a t-shirt, phone pressed to his ear. She could tell from his posture that something was wrong. "I understand." "No, you made the right call. I'll be there in an hour." He ended the call and turned to find Victoria awake. "I'm so sorry. There's a crisis at the manufacturing facility in Boston, a contamination issue that's going to shut down production for at least a week. Is everyone okay?" "No injuries, thankfully, but this is going to delay our new lupus treatment by months. We have patients waiting for this drug, clinical trials that need to continue." He ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident. I have to fly to Boston today, deal with this in person. Of course you do. Victoria climbed out of bed, pulling on Brandon's shirt from the night before. How long will you be gone? I don't know. A few days at least, maybe longer depending on what we find. He pulled her into his arms. I hate this. I hate that I have to leave right after last night. It's okay. This is your job, your responsibility. I understand. Do you? Brandon searched her face. Because this is what being with me looks like, Victoria. Interrupted plans, canceled dates, middle of the night emergencies. I'm trying to get better at balance, but the reality is my work will always demand a lot of me. I know, and I'm not asking you to change who you are or what you do. I'm just asking you to try to include me in your life, even when it's chaotic. Victoria cupped his face. We'll figure it out. Together. He kissed her like she was oxygen and he'd been drowning. Come with me to Boston. I know it's last minute and you probably have work, but I don't want to be away from you. Victoria mentally ran through her schedule. She had 2 small shoots this week, but nothing she couldn't reschedule. Okay, let me make some calls. They flew to Boston on a private jet, which Victoria tried not to be weird about even though she'd never experienced anything remotely that luxurious. Brandon worked through most of the flight, his laptop open, phone constantly buzzing with updates. Victoria sat beside him, editing photos and trying not to distract him, but appreciating that he kept his free hand linked with hers. The situation in Boston was complex. The contamination had originated from a faulty valve in one of the production lines, and while it hadn't affected any drugs already distributed, it meant shutting down and sterilizing the entire facility. Brandon spent 14-hour days at the plant, working with his team to solve the problem and get production back online as quickly as possible. Victoria explored Boston during the days, camera in hand, capturing the city through her lens. But she made sure to be back at their hotel each evening when Brandon returned, exhausted and stressed. She ordered room service, listened to him vent about setbacks and frustrations, gave him someone to lean on who had no agenda beyond his well-being. You're too good to me, Brandon said one night, collapsed on the couch with his head in her lap while she ran her fingers through his hair. Most people would have gotten tired of this by now. Most people didn't spend a summer falling for you when they were 15, Victoria replied. I know who you are, Brandon. I knew you before the money and the company when you were just Ben who wanted to save sharks. This doesn't scare me off. It should, he muttered. I'm a workaholic with terrible boundaries and commitment to causes that will never let me have a normal life. Good thing I'm not interested in normal then. Victoria leaned down to kiss him. Though for the record, we are going to work on those boundaries, because I love you, which means I'm invested in you not working yourself into an early grave. It took 6 days to resolve the Boston crisis. 6 days of long hours and high stress, but also 6 days of Victoria being there at the end of each difficult day, offering comfort and support without judgment. By the time they flew back home, Brandon felt more in love with her than ever, marveling at how she'd seamlessly integrated into even the most challenging aspects of his life. Move in with me, he said on the flight home, the words surprising both of them. I know it's fast, but I want you in my space, making it a home like you said. I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep holding you every night. What do you think? Victoria was quiet for a moment, processing. They'd been together for 2 months, which was objectively fast for such a big step. But she'd also known him for 12 years, in a way, and the foundation they'd built felt solid. My lease is up in 6 weeks, she said slowly. I was planning to renew, but I could look at this as the universe giving me options. Is that a yes? It's a yes with conditions. I pay rent. I know you own the penthouse, but I need to contribute. and I need space for a home office where I can edit photos and meet with clients. And we need to actually decorate together, make it feel like ours instead of just yours." Brandon was already nodding. "All of that is completely reasonable and acceptable. Anything else? We maintain our separate lives too. Friends, hobbies, space when we need it. Moving in together doesn't mean losing our individuality." "Agreed." He pulled her into his lap, ignoring the seatbelt sign. "Have I mentioned lately that I love you? Not in the last hour. I was starting to worry." He kissed her thoroughly, and the pilot's voice over the intercom discreetly reminding them to return to their seats made them both laugh. The next 6 weeks were a whirlwind of planning and preparation. Victoria gave notice on her apartment and began packing, sorting through years of accumulated belongings. Brandon worked with an interior designer to renovate part of the penthouse into a professional home studio for Victoria, complete with state-of-the-art editing equipment and storage for her gear. Emma was thrilled when she found out, immediately planning a housewarming party. "I knew you two were perfect for each other," she crowed. "From the moment I saw Brandon staring at you like a lovesick puppy at Sophie's party." "He was not staring like a lovesick puppy," Victoria protested, though she was laughing. "He absolutely was. Sophie noticed it too. She told me Uncle Brandon looked at you the way her daddy looks at Mommy." Out of the mouths of 7-year-olds, moving day arrived with perfect fall weather. Maya helped Victoria pack the last boxes, giving her friend a long hug before the movers arrived. "I'm happy for you, but I'm also going to miss having you 5 minutes away." "You're always welcome at the penthouse. Brandon already said so. In fact, he suggested weekly dinners so I don't lose touch with my friends." "Okay, I officially approve of him. Any man who encourages friend time is a keeper." The penthouse transformation was stunning. Brandon had kept his promise about making it their space, incorporating Victoria's photography on the walls alongside new art they'd chosen together. Her furniture mixed with his, somehow creating a cohesive style that reflected both of them. The home studio made her nearly cry with its thoughtfulness. He'd even included a comfortable chair by the window for when she needed to think or take breaks. "Welcome home," Brandon said that first evening, wrapping his arms around her as they surveyed their shared space. "It's perfect," Victoria whispered. "We're perfect." Life settled into a new rhythm. Victoria worked from home most days, editing in her studio and meeting with clients in the building's elegant common areas. Brandon still worked long hours, but he'd started delegating more, trusting his executive team to handle things he'd previously micromanaged. They had dinner together most nights, either cooking at home or trying new restaurants. Weekends were protected time, devoted to each other unless emergencies arose. Victoria got to know Brandon's family better. Emma became a close friend, often dropping by with Sophie for impromptu visits. Brandon's parents, Michael and Catherine, welcomed Victoria warmly, with Catherine particularly delighted that her son had found someone who made him prioritize life outside work. "You're good for him," Catherine told Victoria over lunch one afternoon. "I've watched him drive himself into the ground for years, unable or unwilling to slow down. But with you, he's learning balance. He's remembering that life is about more than just work, no matter how important that work is." "He's good for me too," Victoria replied honestly. "He's challenged me to think bigger, take risks with my business. I'm hiring an assistant next month, expanding into commercial photography, things I was too scared to try before. That's what the right partnership does. You make each other better." 4 months after moving in together, Brandon took Victoria back to Riverside, to the community center where they'd first met. The building had been renovated since their time there, modernized and expanded, but the oak tree out back remained, gnarled and beautiful. "I've been thinking about that kiss a lot lately," Brandon said as they stood under the branches, November leaves crunching beneath their feet. "How it felt like both an ending and a beginning. How I thought about you for years afterward, wondering what might have been if we'd stayed in touch." "I thought about you too," Victoria admitted. "That whole year after we moved, I'd imagine running into you somewhere, some romantic coincidence that would bring us back together. And then it actually happened. 12 years late, but it happened." Brandon took her hands in his. "I don't believe in fate, generally speaking. I think we make our own paths, our own choices, but us finding each other again, that feels like something more than coincidence." "Brandon, what are you saying?" He dropped to one knee and Victoria's breath stopped. "I'm saying that I loved you at 16, forgot you out of necessity, and fell completely in love with you all over again at 28. I'm saying that I don't want to spend another day without knowing you're going to be in my life forever. I'm saying that you're my best friend, my partner, the person who makes me want to be better. Victoria Nash, will you marry me?" The ring he produced was stunning emerald surrounded by diamonds, elegant and perfect, but Victoria barely saw it through her tears. "Yes," she gasped. "Yes, absolutely yes." Brandon surged up to kiss her, spinning her around under the oak tree while she laughed and cried simultaneously. When he finally set her down and slipped the ring on her finger, Victoria couldn't stop staring at him, at the impossible, beautiful reality of their story. "I'm calling Emma immediately," Brandon said, pulling out his phone. "And my parents. And probably taking out an ad in the paper because I want everyone to know you said yes." "Maybe let's start with just family," Victoria suggested, laughing at his enthusiasm. "We can work our way up to the newspaper announcements." They told their families that evening over a celebratory dinner Brandon organized at his favorite restaurant. Emma screamed and immediately started planning the wedding before Victoria had even finished describing the proposal. Sophie declared she needed to be a flower girl, which everyone readily agreed to. Brandon's parents toasted the happy couple with obvious joy, and Maya, video called in from across the country for work, cried happy tears through the screen. "When's the wedding?" Emma demanded. "Please tell me soon. I've been waiting to plan this since I figured out you two were perfect for each other." "We literally got engaged 3 hours ago," Victoria protested. "Can we enjoy being engaged for a minute before jumping to wedding planning?" "Fine, but I'm going to be very involved when you are ready." "Fair warning." Brandon pulled Victoria close, pressing a kiss to her temple. "I'd marry you tomorrow if you wanted, but I'm guessing you'd like something a bit more planned." "Maybe slightly," Victoria agreed. "Though not too big. I'm thinking intimate, meaningful. The people who matter most, celebrating something real." "That sounds perfect." They set a date for the following summer, giving them 8 months to plan. Emma, true to her word, threw herself into helping, though Victoria maintained final say on all decisions. They chose a venue outside the city, a beautiful garden estate that felt romantic without being ostentatious. Victoria designed their invitations herself, incorporating photography from their relationship. Brandon insisted on only one thing: that they write their own vows. The months leading up to the wedding were busy but happy. Victoria's photography business continued to grow, her reputation spreading through word of mouth and social media. Brandon's company announced a major breakthrough in affordable cancer treatment that made international news. They navigated the increased public attention together, Brandon shielding Victoria from the worst of it, while she supported him through the intense scrutiny that came with success. There were challenges, of course. A particularly brutal quarter where Brandon reverted to working 18-hour days, forgetting to eat or sleep properly until Victoria staged an intervention. A family emergency when Catherine had a flare-up of her illness and spent a week in the hospital, both of them terrified they might lose her. The normal conflicts and disagreements that came with building a life together, learning each other's quirks and irritations. But through it all, their foundation held. They talked through problems instead of letting them fester. They made time for each other even when life got crazy. They chose each other, every single day, with intention and love. The wedding day arrived with perfect June weather, sunny and warm with a gentle breeze. Victoria got ready surrounded by Maya, Emma, and a few other close friends. Her dress a simple but elegant lace design that made her feel beautiful without being uncomfortable. Brandon, she learned later, spent the morning with his groomsmen trying not to pace nervously, checking his watch every 5 minutes. The ceremony took place under an arch covered in flowers, with about 70 guests watching. When Brandon saw Victoria walking down the aisle on her father's arm, his eyes filled with tears, his expression so full of love that several guests started crying too. They exchanged rings and vows they'd written themselves, promises of support and partnership, of choosing each other through whatever came. Brandon's voice broke when he said, "You walked back into my life when I didn't even know I was looking for you, and suddenly, everything made sense. I promise to love you, protect you, challenge you, and support you for all the days of my life." Victoria's hands shook as she spoke her vows. "You've been part of my story since I was 15 years old, even when we were apart. You're my past, my present, and my future. I promise to stand beside you, to be your partner in every adventure, to remind you to take breaks and eat lunch, and to love you more with each passing day." When the officiant pronounced them married, Brandon kissed Victoria like they were the only two people in the world, and the crowd erupted in applause. The reception was exactly what they'd wanted: good food, heartfelt toasts, lots of dancing and laughter. Sophie took her role as flower girl very seriously, telling everyone she'd known Uncle Brandon and Aunt Victoria were going to get married from the very beginning. Emma's toast made everyone cry and laugh in equal measure. Dr. Martinez attended and congratulated Brandon on finally learning work-life balance. "I haven't fully learned it yet," Brandon admitted, "but I'm working on it every day. The fact that you're here, fully present on your wedding day instead of sneaking off to check emails is progress, Dr. Martinez said with a knowing smile. "Hold on to that." Victoria and Brandon snuck away during a quiet moment, finding a garden bench away from the reception. "Hello, husband," Victoria said, the word feeling strange and wonderful on her tongue. "Hello, wife." Brandon pulled her close, careful not to wrinkle her dress too much. "Having a good day, the best day. Though I'll be honest, I'm looking forward to the honeymoon more. 2 weeks with you, no phones, no work emergencies. Greece is going to be amazing. Just you, me, and endless Mediterranean views." He kissed her softly. "Thank you." "For what?" "For saying yes at Sophie's party when I hired you. For giving me your real number. For taking a chance on this. For loving me despite the complicated mess that comes with my life." Brandon's eyes were serious, emotional. "I don't deserve you, but I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to. You do deserve me. We deserve each other." Victoria cupped his face. "We found each other twice, Brandon. That's not luck. That's destiny making sure we didn't miss out on something important." They returned to the reception hand in hand, ready to celebrate with their loved ones, both feeling like the luckiest people alive. The honeymoon in Greece was everything they'd hoped for and more. 2 weeks of lazy mornings and adventurous afternoons, exploring ancient ruins and swimming in crystal-clear water, eating incredible food and making love under starlit skies. Brandon kept his promise about disconnecting from work, checking in only twice for genuine emergencies and otherwise being completely present. "I could get used to this," he said one evening as they watched the sunset from their hotel balcony, Victoria tucked against his side. "You should. We should do this regularly. Maybe not Greece specifically, but making time to just be together, away from everything else." "You're right. Let's make it a tradition. 3 or 4 times a year we completely disconnect and focus on us." They returned home tanned and relaxed, ready to settle into married life. Victoria's business continued thriving, and she hired a second assistant to help manage the workload. Brandon made good on his promise about better balance, implementing new policies at Thompson Pharmaceuticals that encouraged all employees to maintain healthy work-life boundaries, leading by example. A year after the wedding, Victoria missed her period. Then a second one. The positive pregnancy test sent them both into a tailspin of excitement and terror. "We're having a baby," Brandon kept repeating like he couldn't quite believe it. "We're going to be parents." "Are we ready for this?" Victoria asked, hand pressed to her still flat stomach. "I mean, we haven't really talked about timing. I don't think anyone's ever truly ready, but I want this. With you, I want everything." He knelt in front of where she sat on their bathroom counter, pressing a kiss to her stomach. "We're going to be amazing parents." The pregnancy was relatively easy, though Victoria had terrible morning sickness for the first trimester. Brandon hovered constantly, worried and attentive, driving her crazy with his overprotectiveness, while simultaneously making her fall more in love with him. They converted one of the spare rooms into a nursery, painting it soft yellow and filling it with thoughtful touches. They found out they were having a boy at the 20-week ultrasound, and both cried watching their son move on the screen. Brandon immediately started reading every parenting book he could find, determined to be prepared. Victoria documented everything with her camera, wanting to remember every moment of this journey. Thomas Benjamin Thompson was born on a rainy October evening after 14 hours of labor. He came into the world screaming, healthy and perfect, with Brandon's dark hair and Victoria's green eyes. Brandon cried holding his son for the first time, overwhelmed with love and responsibility and awe. "He's perfect," Brandon whispered, unable to look away from the tiny face. "You're perfect. You made a perfect human." "We made a perfect human," Victoria corrected, exhausted but glowing. Team effort. Parenthood was harder than either of them anticipated. The sleepless nights, the constant worry, the way their entire lives reorganized around this tiny, demanding person. But it was also more rewarding than they'd imagined. Watching Thomas grow and change, seeing pieces of both of them in his expressions and personality, the overwhelming love that came with being someone's parent, Brandon cut back his hours even more, determined not to be an absent father. He worked from home when possible, took paternity leave that raised eyebrows in his industry, made it to doctor's appointments and milestone moments. Thompson Pharmaceuticals didn't collapse without him there every minute, which was both humbling and liberating. "I missed so much when Sophie was born," Emma said during one of her visits, watching Brandon change Thomas's diaper with surprising competence. "Our dad was always working, hardly ever home. I'm so glad you're breaking that cycle." "Victoria wouldn't let me repeat those patterns even if I wanted to," Brandon said honestly. "She holds me accountable, reminds me what actually matters. I'm a better man because of her." Thomas turned 1, then 2, each milestone documented thoroughly by Victoria's camera. They added to their family when Victoria got pregnant again, this time with a girl they named Sarah Catherine, after both grandmothers. The penthouse felt wonderfully chaotic with 2 young children, filled with toys and laughter, and the beautiful mess of family life. 5 years after their wedding, they bought a house in the suburbs with a big yard and good schools nearby. The penthouse had been perfect for them as a couple, but with 2 kids and another on the way, they needed more space. Victoria converted the garage into a professional studio, while Brandon created a home office that actually let him maintain better boundaries between work and family time. Remember when we were just 2 kids with cameras at a community center? Victoria said one evening after they'd gotten the children to bed, collapsed together on their new couch in their new living room. "I remember thinking you were the prettiest girl I'd ever seen," Brandon replied, "and being terrified to talk to you. You hid it well. I thought you were so confident. I was faking it. Classic teenage boy strategy." He pulled her closer, pressing a kiss to her hair. "Best summer of my teenage years, hands down. Mine too, even before the kiss, especially after the kiss." They laughed, the sound comfortable and familiar, the laughter of people who knew each other inside and out. Their 3rd child, a boy they named Alexander James, arrived that spring. Thompson Pharmaceuticals announced another breakthrough treatment, this one for Alzheimer's disease, that cemented Brandon's reputation as a leader in accessible medicine. Victoria's photography was featured in a major exhibition, her work recognized nationally. But the achievements that mattered most happened in quiet moments. Thomas's first day of school with both parents there to see him off. Sarah's dance recital where she spotted them in the crowd and waved enthusiastically. Alex's first steps, taken while reaching for his father. Family dinners filled with conversation and laughter. Weekend trips to the community center in Riverside, now named the Thompson Family Community Center after Brandon's generous donation, where they volunteered and gave back to the place that had brought them together. 10 years after their wedding, they renewed their vows in an intimate ceremony with just family present. They stood under the same arch where they'd first married, older and wiser, marked by years of love and challenges and growth. "I'd do it all again," Brandon said during his vows. "Every moment, every choice, every day that led me back to you. You're my home, Victoria, you and our children. Everything else is just details." "You taught me that love is a choice we make every day," Victoria replied. "And I choose you, today, tomorrow, and all the days after. You're my beginning and my always." Their children watched with varying levels of attention, Thomas old enough at 11 to understand the significance, Sarah and Alex more interested in when they could have cake. Emma cried throughout the ceremony, as did both sets of parents. It was simple and perfect, a reaffirmation of promises made and kept. That night, after the children were asleep and the house was quiet, Brandon and Victoria sat on their back porch, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. "Do you ever think about how different our lives would be if Emma's photographer hadn't canceled?" Victoria asked, her head on Brandon's shoulder. "All the time. Every possible timeline where we didn't reconnect, where you walked into that party and I wasn't there, or I didn't recognize you. It's terrifying how easily we might have missed each other again. But we didn't. We got our second chance. We got our forever." Brandon tilted her face up to kiss her, soft and sweet and full of years of love. "Best hiring decision I never actually made," Victoria laughed against his lips. "Best party booking I almost turned down." They stayed there until the stars filled the sky completely. 2 people who'd found each other twice, built a life together, and created their own happy ending. The photographer and the CEO, the teenage sweethearts reunited by chance and held together by choice, wrapped in the kind of love that made every moment before it worth the wait. Inside, their children slept peacefully, unaware of the extraordinary story of how their parents found each other. But someday they'd be old enough to hear it, to understand that love sometimes worked in mysterious ways, bringing people together exactly when they needed each other most. That a summer program, 12 years earlier, and a canceled photographer had set in motion a chain of events that led to their family, their home, their existence. And in the quiet of that perfect evening, with the stars overhead and their family safe inside, Brandon and Victoria held each other close and were grateful for every twist of fate, every coincidence, every moment that had led them exactly where they belonged, together.